Hello friends and welcome in today's session. Today we are going to learn remaining separation techniques of the mixtures as well as crystallization process, some other purification methods and physical and chemical change. Along with that, what are the elements and compounds, right? So this is your part 4 of chapter number 2. So let's begin with today's point. Yesterday I said that separation of components of the air we will see it in next video. So see here separation of the components of the air. All of you know that air is a mixture of different gases, right? So from that air all these gases are, the gases are diffusing very fastly to each other and they have mixed very well. So how can we separate these gases from each other? So for that method is given here. Air is a mixture of gases and components of air can be separated by fractional distillation. So yesterday only we have seen about the fractional distillation. What is the fractional distillation? Here we can separate out the substances whose boiling points difference is less than 25, right? So this method can be utilized. And yesterday even we have seen how it functions. So this method is utilized to separate the different components of the air. Now say, first of all, air as it is in a gaseous state, you should convert that air into a liquid state. Now how can you convert this air into a liquid state? So for that you have to increase pressure and decrease temperature. These two things if you will do, automatically gaseous air will become a liquid air. And then as we allow the liquid air slowly warm up in the fractional distillation column, then the different components of the air will get separated. See in short here the flow chart is given. Air compress and cool by increasing pressure and decreasing temperature. Automatically this gaseous air will be converted into a liquid air, and then this liquid air you can slowly allow it to warm up. Now as the temperature will go on increasing, so it will start with the minus, because here you can see the boiling points of different gases are given. This is oxygen minus 183, argon is having minus 186, and nitrogen is having minus 196. Means if you have to maintain that air's temperature, liquid air temperature, then it should be minimum minus 200. And whenever you will start to warm up that air, then first out of these which temperature will come up? As it is in a minus, definitely the temperature minus 196 will come first. So at that temperature, the nitrogen gas, as the boiling point of the nitrogen is minus 196, the liquid nitrogen will start to convert into a gaseous form. And at this temperature, the nitrogen will get separated from the air. The same you can see in your textbook. Here also it is given a flow chart. As air homogeneous mixture and its different components can be separated by fractional distillation process is given. Air compress cool by increasing pressure and decreasing temperature, and allow this liquid air slowly warm up. Here the table is given. In that percentage of air by volume it is given of these three gases, and their boiling point is given. Oxygen minus 183, minus 186 and minus 196. Nitrogen is of 78%, argon 0.9% and oxygen 20.9%, right? So these are the major components of the air. So among these, the first nitrogen will be get separated at minus 196. Then as the nitrogen get over, all the liquid nitrogen converted into air, then again temperature will start to rise up, and slowly it will be rise up to minus 186. Here at this temperature argon will get separated from the air component, and when the temperature will again rise up and reach to the minus 183, that time the oxygen gas will get separated, right? So here you can see the full separating component of the air unit is given. So this also you try to understand. This is the filter through which the air will be filtered and let it go in, right? So this is the compressor where this air is kept under high pressure, right? So whenever the pressure will be increased, automatically the air's temperature will be increased. So here under the high pressure, hot air will be come out from this chamber and entered in this chamber, right? Here if you will see, here one inlet and one outlet is there, right? That is of water. So in inlet we can see the freezing cold water is there, which will be passed through this pipe. Here the coiling structure is there. So in this structure the water, freezing water will move, right? And from here it will be out. Now whatever the hot air is coming, it will be remain in this full chamber. So this air, due to this freezing cold water, slowly air's temperature will be decreased and air will get cooled. So here you can see here very clearly the color difference. Here it is of orange color and where it is of blue color. So as soon as the water, freezing water is there, here it is little bit light blue color is there, means here the temperature of water is low, and as soon as it move ahead, temperature exchange will take place, right? Heat will be get exchanged, air heat will be given to the water and water's cold temperature will be accepted by the air. So automatically air get cooled and water becomes hot. This hot water will come out, right? So as soon as we have highly compressed and cooled air is there, then that will be taken ahead here in this separating column. You know that in the air carbon dioxide is there, and whenever we compress the carbon dioxide gas under low, high pressure and low temperature, then automatically this carbon dioxide will be converted into solid form, right? So here the solid carbon dioxide will be separated out, right? And that is called as a dry ice. Remaining liquid air is there, it will become over here. This is called as the expansion jet, right? Now in this expansion jet, the pressure will be slowly decreased and the air will be passed into the next fractionating column, right? This is the fractional distillation column. Now in this fractional distillation column, the pressure, as here the pressure is released, means temperature will also be little bit increased. Air will start to convert into a gaseous form, right? So as this nitrogen gas is there, because we know that the nitrogen is there, this nitrogen's boiling point is minus 196. So whenever the temperature will start increasing, so this is the temperature which will come first. So that's why here we are getting the first nitrogen out from outside, because that is the gas which will be first released out from this liquid air. So that nitrogen we are taking from this outlet. Then the argon's temperature will come, argon boiling point will reach, and then the from second outlet automatically we are getting the argon. The remaining one liquid of oxygen will be collected over here, because here the liquid oxygen's temperature is not reaching. So automatically oxygen will be remaining liquid state only. So this is how with this separation of components of air unit we can understand that how the different components of the air get separated. It is very easy. This diagram you keep in mind. Sometimes this diagram will be asked, even the labels also you have to remember. Along with this, the flow chart is also given here. This flow chart you have to remember, and even the percentage of air by volume of these three gases, even their boiling points. These many things you have to remember. Next point is, how can we obtain pure copper sulfate from an impure sample? So see here, purification of solid by crystallization. So this is the method of crystallization. Earlier also I have given a hint to how the crystals are formed, right? Now how we can obtain a crystals? So for that we should need to prepare the saturated solution of that substance. Earlier also you have learned what is mean by saturated solution and how it to be prepared, right? So this method is utilized whenever the sample you have to collect it purely, and whatever the unwanted material is there, dirt is there, that you have to remove, then this crystallization method is utilized. Take an example of a salt purification. You know that the table salt is there, NaCl, that we are obtaining from the ocean water, right? Now in that, whenever this ocean water is evaporated, so along with the salt we are also getting kind of a soil particles or dirt, right? So that can be separated, these soil particles can be separated from these salt particles by the process of crystallization. Now how this process can be carried out? This we will understand with the example of here, pure copper sulfate from its solution. So for that you have to dissolve copper sulfate in a minimum amount of water. Don't take maximum amount of water, more water, because more amount of water means more water it will take to evaporate, right? Then once this substance is dissolved, copper sulfate is dissolved in the water, some of the dirt particles are there that will not be dissolved in the water. So you have to filter that solution. Once the solution is filtered, then whatever the impurities are there, that will be remain on the filter paper. So in this way, by filtration, you will remove the undissolved impurities from the solution. Now you have the solution of a copper sulfate, right, without its impurities. Now the thing is that you have to evaporate and then remove the water. So afterwards you will get only and only pure copper sulfate. So evaporate the solution in China dish to get a saturated solution. And once this saturated solution is formed, means whatever the water is there, its dissolving capacity is over, right? Now no further copper sulfate is dissolved in the water, then that solution is called as a saturated solution. Now once you have prepared a saturated solution at a high temperature, then allow this saturated solution slowly cool, right? So as soon as the temperature decreases, the extra salt or copper sulfate which is dissolved in that water will start to get crystallized. So like this copper sulfate crystals we are getting. So in this way, by the crystallization method, we can obtain a pure solid substance and remove its all impurities. So the same it is given in your textbook. Crystallization is method used to purify solid salt which we get from the sea water, and we can remove other impurities. Here crystallization technique is better than the evaporation technique. Now why it is said that crystallization technique is better than the evaporation? Because you know that evaporation, in that we are heating and removing the water. But whenever we do this, take an example of a sugar. Whenever we evaporate the water by heating, then sugar we will get. But due to high heat, right, increased temperature, sugar may get charred, right? All the water vapors will get released. So they may get converted into coal-like structure, because on heating it may becomes very dry, right? So that may not be remain as like a sugar. So this happens in the evaporation technique, right? Second thing is that some of the impurities are there, they may also dissolve in the solution. So if these impurities will be dissolved in the solution, we cannot separate them just by simple filtration. So in evaporation techniques, these impurities we are not able to remove, and that's why to avoid these things, crystallization technique is used to remove the water and get its pure crystals than the evaporation. This question will be asked for 2 marks. How the crystallization technique is better than the evaporation technique. So these 2 points you can write. See the applications of this technique. Purification of salt is done from the seawater, and separation of crystals of alum, that is the pitkari, right? All of you know the alum. Alum we are using to pure the water, right? Load the particles. Take an example, in rainy days, whatever the municipality water is coming, that is little bit brownish in color, right? Dirty water is there. It is not clear water, right? So in that, some of the soil particles are there, very fine soil particles are there. After filtration also that is not removed, because the particle of that size is very small, so that can be get filtered, right? And even if you keep the water as it is for 1 hour, 2 hour, then also these particles are not settling down. To settle that particles, we are using this alum, right? White color structure is there. Just you rotate that in a water for 2-3 times, then this alum will get dissolved into the water, then make these all soil particles are there, right? Dirt particles are there, heavy, and as it becomes a heavy, they will just get settled down. So within half an hour you can able to see that the brownish color water is there. Just you rotating the alum in that, after half an hour the water you will get it is a clear. All the particles just get settled down. So this alum is there, that can be purified by the crystallization method, right? Now see, these are some of the methods by which we can obtain the pure substance. Along with this, there are some other methods also. For example, just now I said that municipality water is coming in your house, right? So how that municipality water is coming to your house? Is it directly pumped from the river and given to each and every house? No. Before giving to the each and every house, it is get purified. Now how it is get purified? See here. This is a water purification system in the water works, right? Means municipality or municipal corporation is there, that or those who are water providing units are there. They are purifying the water with this system, right? Now how it is done? See, simple methods are used of the purification. This is what the water reservoir. It may be anything, lake, river, anything from which we are collecting water, right? This water is not pure. Maybe it has some of the dissolved impurities, undissolved impurities, or some of the microorganisms also. This is causing microorganisms. So this is not safe for drinking. Now how can we convert this unsafe water to safe water for drinking? See, first unit is that the sedimentation tank. Now here sedimentation means simple method allowed to settle down the heavy particles, right? So this water will be collected, stored in this tank, right? And allow it to just settle down. When you keep this water undisturbed for little bit long time, maybe for 1 day, then whatever the heavy particles are there, that all particles just get settled down slowly and make a thick layer at here the base. Remaining all lightweight particles are there and water is there. It will be here. Now by this method we have removed all heavy impurities. Now this water will be transferred to the next tank. This tank is known as the loading tank, right? Now in this loading tank, whatever the suspended impurities are there, which did not get settled down here in this tank, here it will be removed. How? Just by loading. I just now said about the alum, right? That is the pitkari, white color structure. So they will just apply that over here and make these light weighted impurities to make them heavy, and as it becomes the heavy, slowly also they get settled down. These particles slowly get settled down. Now this water is there that don't have the lightweight impurities also and heavy impurities also, right? Now this water will be transferred to this filtration tank, right? So here you can see, here the different layers are made, right? Once this water is left in this tank through these different layers. Now which are these layers? Here the water is there. Then here the topmost layer is there, that is of a fine sand. Below that gravels are there, little bit large size pebbles are there. And at last there is a core gravel, right? So through these all layers water will be passed, and this water, this is called as the filtration. Water will get filtered through these all layers, and after filtration this water will be collected into one more tank. That tank is called as a chlorination tank, right? Now in this chlorination tank, chlorine tablet is added, right? Now what is the role of the chlorine? You know that chlorine kills the bacteria. Because by these all methods, sedimentation is there, loading is there, filtration is there. With that all methods we have removed all undissolved impurities, right? But some of the disease causing microorganisms are there. These cannot be separated by these all methods of separation. So that need to be killed, and this can be killed by just chlorine. Add a chlorine in the water, right? Or even the bleach is also added sometime, right? So this chlorine will be added into this water, and that's why this tank is called as the chlorination tank. Now in this chlorination tank, by adding chlorine, all the bacteria will be killed. Even the best example you know that of chlorination. All of you are going for swimming, right? And in swimming tank, water is there. It is not always clean. So how they keep that water clean to no one get infection from the water? They are just adding a chlorine in that water. As the water is get chlorinated, so many people, if they have taken the bath into the swimming pool, then also whatever the bacteria are growing in that water, that all will be killed by just adding a chlorine. The same here, the chemical is used to kill the bacteria in the water, that is nothing but a chlorine. So after chlorination, water is free from all the impurities, even the bacteria, and then this water is supplied to the home for drinking. So this is what some of the general techniques of the purification by which water is purified, and from the reservoir, after passing through all these steps, water is passed to each and every home for drinking. Below these are some questions are there. Solve these questions. Then next point is the physical and the chemical change, right? Now see here. What is mean by physical change? The change in which only transformation of state, maybe solid, liquid or gas, is happen. No new substance is formed. Any new substance is not going to be formed, right? Here you have to consider its chemical change, right? Molecular formula is not changed. No any new molecule is formed, means new substance is not formed, right? Is made are called a physical change, right? and most of the physical changes are there, they are reversible. Example is given of ice. Now take an example, right? As I said, whenever there is a just change in a state and there is no new substance is formed, and then only that change is called as a physical change. Example is given, melting of ice. Ice is there, you heat it, it is in a solid state. Due to getting heat, the ice get melt and convert into a liquid water. So whenever liquid water is there, that formula if you will check, it is H2O, and whenever the same water will becomes a solid in the form of ice, then also it remains a H2O. So there is no any change in its formula, right? So no new substance is formed, only state is changed. So that's why this change is a physical change. Another thing, example you take a wood, right? A big wood log is there, you just cut it into a pieces and just convert them into a small pieces. So what do you think? The size is changed here, right? Earlier it was very big and now it is a very small. But wood remains wood, right? So this is also a physical change. But suppose if you burn the wood, right? If you are burning the wood, then wood will burn, it will release heat, light, and ash is formed, right? So ash is a new substance, it is not as like a wood. So this can be a chemical change. So this is what a difference. Next thing I said that physical changes are generally reversible. Now most of the things are there that you can reversely you take it back. Means what? Ice you have converted into a water, then again you cool the water, you will get ice. Means again you got the ice, right? But another example I said, small pieces of wood logs are there. From that again you are not getting wood log, right? Or taken another example, paper is there. You tear the paper and forms the paper bits. From that paper bits, are you getting back a full sheet of a paper? No. But this is again a physical change, because whenever the full sheet of paper was there, that time also it was a paper, and whenever it converts into a small paper bits, then also it is a paper only. No chemical changes occur. Paper is remain, only size is changed, but this is not a reversible. So is it clear? Physical changes are there where the state or size is changed, only physical properties are changed, right? But from that reversible possible, after that reversible change is also there, but it is not compulsory that every physical change shows the reversible change also, right? So keep this in mind, physical change where only its properties are changed, state is changed, only physical properties are changed like state, size is there, and no new substance is formed, right? Now see the next one, chemical change, exactly opposite to the physical change. Here in this change a new substance is formed, right? And in this chemical properties of the substance is changed, and these changes are not reversible. These changes are not reversible. Example is cooking of a food, right? Now here once the food is cooked, afterwards you cannot reverse back into a raw food. Take some other examples, right? Potato is there. Now when the potato is raw, right, that time you can see the potato, it is having the particular shape. After cooking, the potato shape is not going to be changed, but the hard potato was there, that becomes a soft. Means whatever its chemical properties are there, that is get changed in the cooking. So any food substance atom, whenever it is cooked, then it will be considered as an chemical change. Another example, if you have a wheat atta, right, and you are adding water in that and making a dough. So whenever dough is there, from that you are making balls, you are rolling the roti, chapati, till that it is a physical change. But once this chapati is baked, then it will become a chemical change. Best example of physical and chemical change showing in one is a candle, burning candle, right? Whenever the candle is burning, then in that wax is there, it is get melted, right? Then the melted wax, it will be rolled down, again it becomes a solid. So melting of wax is there, it is a physical change, right? Because here only state is changed. Solid wax was there, that becomes a liquid. When it cools, it becomes once again a solid. But these whatever the melted wax is there, due to more heat, the vapors are formed. Here again the state changed. Liquid wax becomes a gaseous wax. State changed. So this change is also you can call it as a physical change. But when these vapors of the wax get burned, right, produce heat and light, then that will be called as a chemical change, right? So burning of candle is a chemical change. Melting of wax, vaporization of wax is there, that is called as a physical change. So this is what a physical and chemical change. Some basic concepts are given. See in your textbook. Physical and chemical change. Here it is given some of the properties which are changing in physical change, and examples are also given here. Below that, these are some questions are given. So you have to classify these all changes into chemical and physical, right? So solve these questions also. After that, what are the type of pure substance, elements and compound? This is the last point from your textbook. So this already we have learned what is meant by element and what is meant by compound. See what are the types of the pure substances. In that element and compounds we are going to see. See here. Types of pure substances. Pure substances are means those who are made up of only one type of atoms, right? And you cannot divide that element into more and more smaller substances, right? So here the types of pure substances, elements are there. So elements and compounds. In that element, it is a basic form of matter which cannot be broken down into simpler substances by chemical reaction, right? Here we cannot break them further by the chemical reaction, and these are called as the elements, right? They are of three types: metals, non-metals and metalloids, right? Now what are the metals? See here the properties of the metals. They are lustrous, malleable and ductile. Malleable. Lustrous means they have the shiny substance, shiny appearance is there. Then malleable means if you hammer them, then you can convert them into a broad sheet, right? Then ductile. Ductile means they can drawn into wires. You can make their thin wires, right? So these are some of the properties of the metal. Even they are good conductors of heat as well as electricity, right? So they are good conductor. And next one, they are sonorous. Sonorous means they are producing ringing sound when we hammer them. Take an example of any metal. Best example is our school bell, right? Or whenever you visit into a temple, there is a big bell which we are calling as a ghanta. When we hammer it, it also produce ton sound, right? So this is coming, that is sonorous sound, right? So all the metals are producing a sonorous sound. And whatever the properties we have seen, that is lustrous, malleable, ductile, good conductors of heat and electricity, means conductors, and sonorous, these all properties are shown by the metals. Examples are iron, aluminium, zinc, mercury, copper, silver, gold. All these are the examples of the metals. And if you will see in a non-metals, exactly opposite to these all properties will be shown by the non-metals. See the first, don't have a luster, means they don't shine, right? Not malleable, you cannot make a sheet of these substances. You cannot make wires of these substances, means they are non-malleable, non-ductile, right? They are poor conductor of heat and electricity, means they are non-conductor, and they are not sonorous, right? Exactly opposite to these properties. Here are some of the examples of the non-metals: hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, iodine, carbon, sulfur and phosphorus, right? Majority we can see here, all the metals are there, that is in the solid state. Even non-metals are there, that we can observe in solid, liquid and gaseous state. Now the third type is there, that is the metalloids, right? So the metalloid is there, that is showing the some properties of the metals and some properties of the non-metals. Means it is intermediate between metals and non-metals, combination of the both. So metalloids are the elements which show some properties of the metals and some properties of the non-metals, that is boron, silicon, germanium. These are some of the examples of the metalloids. And second point, compound. If you will see the compound element, we cannot break down into smaller substances by chemical reaction, but what is there in the compound? Compound is a substance composed of two or more elements. Two or more elements come together in a fixed ratio, right? Their ratio is fixed and they are chemically combined together to form a compound, right? So from the two or more elements, one compound is formed, but their proportion is there, that proportion is the fixed one. Take an example, water. Water, if you will see, in that two hydrogens and one oxygen is there. So 2:1 ratio of hydrogen and oxygen, whenever it is there, definitely it will gives water only. Carbon dioxide, in that one carbon and two oxygen is there, CO2, right? So this is the fixed proportion of carbon and oxygen, gives you carbon dioxide. Even the sugar, salt, iron, sulfide, all these are the examples of the compound, right? Iron sulfide, it is there. So they are having two elements together in a fixed ratio, definite proportion to form a compound. Here the differences between the mixture and the compounds are given, how they are different from each other, because both are containing two or more elements together, but still how they are different from each other. The first point is there, it is composed of two or more elements or compounds mixed together, but in this we can see only two or more elements only, not a compound. Second point is there, the composition of the component is in any ratio, it is not a fixed word, but in case of compound it has the fixed ratio. Here it shows the properties of the components. In the mixture, every component shows its own properties, but in a case of compound, whenever two elements comes together to form a compound, they will lose their properties and shows different properties, right? They will lose their original properties. A fourth point is there, in mixture the components can be separated by a physical method, but in case of compound we cannot separate the components of that compound by a physical method. That can be separated by a chemical method. See in your textbook, one activity is also given to prove this. Before that, see the elements. What are the elements? Then the properties of the metals are given. Metals, non-metals and metalloids are there of the elements. So in that, metals all properties are given. Examples of the metals are given. In that, see some exceptions are also given. Generally we see that most of the metals are in solid state, but mercury is there, that is only metal found in a liquid state at a room temperature. Here properties of non-metals are given. examples of the non-metals are given, but here some of the elements are there. They are showing the intermediate properties, so they are called as the metalloid along with their examples. Now this box more to know is there, that you have to go through, because based on this also some of the questions will be asked. In that, see, majority of the elements are solid, some elements are in gaseous state also at a room temperature, 2 elements are liquid at room temperature, that is mercury as well as bromine, and elements like gallium, cesium becomes liquid at a temperature slightly above the room temperature. So this point you should know. Next point is compound. In that activity is given, in that mixture is given to crush iron filings and sulfur powder together, and the same it is given to the 2 groups. One group has to make a mixture and another group will form its compound. Now how? First group is there, they will just mix these 2 components, so they will get a mixture, and second group is there, they will heat this mixture. When the mixture is heated, then the properties of these substances will be get changed and new substance will be formed by the second group, right? So in this way, as the new substance is formed, it will show the chemical change, and the first group is there, in that only mixing is there of the iron filling and sulfur powder, so that is nothing but the physical change, and it is a kind of a mixture, and this will forms a compound. Here again the table is given of the differentiating point, so you go through this table, just now we have discussed, and whatever the result it is shown here. So the first group will show physical change, second group will show chemical change, and whatever the properties have changed, that it is given here. Based on this we have practical also that we will go through. This is the last table in your textbook, in which all the matters which are solid, liquid and gases get divided into 2 parts, that is pure substance and the mixture. This we have seen in the beginning of the chapter only. Once again go through this table. Pure substance will be elements, properties, and compounds, properties. Mixtures are of 2 types, homogeneous when we are saying them homogeneous, and when the mixtures are heterogeneous. So go through these all points, and here all the points of the chapter is get over. So here we have finished our chapter 2. If you have any doubt in this chapter, you can ask. Otherwise, whatever the in-text questions I said, that you have to solve. Highlighted points are there. With that you can prepare your own notes. Any doubt is there, then please write in comments and prepare well. All the best.